My young daughter and I recently started a garden. It's like one of those Little House on the Prairie episodes, except our little house is a big mess. There's water on the floor, mud actually. It's attracting bugs. I had to move the furniture to make space. And 8 weeks into it, we have one bean pod. I've learned that I'm no pa. But I'm also reminded of one of the key choices in leadership, which is to work on either technical problems or adaptive problems. Technical problems are easy to define, and the solutions are within reach, like figuring out how to lay out the garden, how many inches to space the seeds, developing a watering schedule. There are best practices for all of these things, existing know-how, expertise, which you can Google. Much of HR work is technical, writing HR policy, implementing remote working technologies or AI systems, even most leadership trainings. Technical work is endless. Adaptive problems, on the other hand, require learning, often through uncertainty, when you don't have easy answers. More relevant to our conversation here today is how to cultivate the soil for human growth, relating to our companies as living organisms, and yes, relating to our people as human beings, not just picking the fruits of their labor. Cultivating human potential is mostly adaptive work. In dedicating your career to it, you've made a choice that's bigger and I think much more beautiful than you might imagine. Yet most of our work is technical problem solving, and applying those technical fixes to adaptive problems is the single biggest leadership mistake that we make. Because it is adaptive, it requires leadership. And that's the choice that you and I face as we re-enter post-COVID, to lead adaptive change, or to go back to doing mostly technical work, technical change, to challenge the status quo, or to accept what most people call normal. And I think despite all we've been told, the normal that our companies have been offering to us are anything but normal. They're a pale semblance of the intimacy, connection, authenticity, community, joy, and grief that lie just beneath the surface of old habits and routines that COVID is revealing for us. I think COVID-19 is bringing into sharp relief this path that we're already on. Some people say COVID changes everything. I don't see anything in our response to COVID that is actually very new. It's just an intensification, an amplification of existing trends: surveillance, tracking, distancing, the digitization of entertainment, recreation, sociality. So my invitation today is to listen for that choice, a leadership moment that comes across your desk and demands adaptive change, not just technical change. Through extensive personal research, travel, conversations, and reflection, and much trial and error, I've learned that it's most helpful to view leadership as a moment, rather than as a trait like charisma or vision, and certainly not as a person, title, or position. They're moments that make your heart leap with hopeful anticipation, or with fear of taking the next step. They hold the promise for that long-awaited breakthrough, or for the more beautiful world our know as possible, to use a phrase coined by Charles Eisenstein. Leadership moments also hold the uncomfortable possibility that you, too, need to change. And we who engage in leadership moments are the ones who speak up, stand up, or ask questions that no one else will. Sometimes we even take a knee in a patriotic protest. Even in normal times, the average executive faces 5 leadership moments every day. Every day. My work to democratize leadership is driven by 2 questions. Would you recognize a leadership moment when it came your way? And would you know what to do when it did? So our task for today is to discover your leadership moment. That starts with asking different and bolder questions, questions that may reveal possibilities that were invisible from where we stood only 12 weeks ago, when my bean pod was just a seed. There are 2 primary adaptive challenges I want to speak to today. The first is, how can we rehumanize the workplace? COVID-19 has given us a view into people's everyday lives as never before. Little screaming kids running in the background, unshaven and unmakeup faces, the terrible toll of sickness and death. We're getting a glimpse into each other's raw humanity like never before. What are we going to do with this insight now that we have it? That question is left out of the equation in our prevailing economic wisdom about human capital. Human capital, they say, is a commodity worth only as much as it can be purchased for. Over time, this is what makes us begin to believe that we are inherently worthless, that we don't belong unless we can show our worth. Or as White House advisor Kevin Hassett said just this week, we're just a part of our nation's human capital stock. This perpetuates some of the very HR problems that we try to solve. Low morale, low engagement, toxic behavior. These aren't accidents. They're baked into the cake. There's actually no such thing as a dysfunctional system or organization. Every organization is perfectly aligned to get the results it's getting. But what we're good at is reducing numbers or working with numbers, increasing numbers, thinking in terms of investment, payback periods, things like that. That's familiar territory. That's financial thinking. So it's not too hard to transplant financial thinking onto our people and say it's a human capital problem, a technical problem. It's a matter of getting certain numbers up or down. What if instead we created a completely different relationship to the people we call resources or capital? Created a more human organization, treating people in a way that respects the demands of their time, their energy, their family, their gifts, everything. Patagonia has been doing this for years, most recently under Dean Carter, the Chief Human Resources Officer at Patagonia. And they really dug into the performance management process because it's actually an adaptive growth process that feels good when it's done well throughout the year and ends with a conversation, the performance review, that employees hate, that the manager hates, and that everyone has to recover from during the next cycle. There's a lot of science and research that says that people literally feel depleted at the end of that process. And the companies then have to spend a lot of money just to recover. It's not only expensive, it's damaging to human dignity. People are not capital, not just resources for extraction and depletion. So at Patagonia, rather than the usual annual engagement survey, or as Dean Carter calls it, the annual extraction survey, HR asked itself, what processes do we have that are more regenerative in nature? And they started to put questions to people about what they're putting into their lives. Did this help with your relationship with your spouse? Did you have more quality time with your children? Did you have time to go to the doctor? Did this improve your ability to contribute to your community? And in every case, all of those things that they were putting into people's lives improved. In addition, engagement went up, and it did not have any effect on productivity because it was already high. So when you start treating people with a regenerative approach versus an extractive one, you trigger a whole new way of people working and relating to one another. And this line of adaptive inquiry has led Patagonia to a new mission, a new line of business to save our home planet. And that mission mirrors a growing awareness that neither we nor other parts of nature are just capital, raw materials, just a bunch of instrumental stuff, a pile of resources devoid of life that we can exploit in ignorance. Here's another way to think about this. What if one of my 3 children came down with COVID? They're fine, by the way. And I refused to take them to a hospital to take care. And you said to me, Eric, if you don't take care of your child, protective services might come for you. You know, bad things might happen to you, Eric. You might get rated low on your next daddy engagement survey. They may not be there for you when you need them, when you're older. Can you see how that echoes some of the human resources narrative today? Especially the narrative which says that we have to take care of this pile of human resources. If we don't, then bad things are going to happen to the company. Productivity will go down. And even if I agreed with you and said, you know, you're right, bad things may happen to us, so I better take care of my son, I'm probably not going to take very good care of him. He's not going to thrive or grow because really what you need, what I need, is to be connected with my love of this person. Then I'm going to know how to take care of him beyond anything that can be prescribed, rewarded, surveyed, enforced, best practicized, regulated, managed, because it's coming from a deeper human relationship. So the next time a problem is framed for you as a human capital or human resource problem, that might be a flag that you're facing a leadership moment to rehumanize the workplace, to focus on what really matters. And COVID-19 presents us with that choice. It's inviting us to consider what kind of companies we want to work in, what kind of human relationships we want in those companies, and how can we bring our gifts and talents into a world in a more meaningful way, not just in a way that's mediated by their utilitarian financial value. And ultimately, what kind of world do we want to live in? These are the deeper questions that require HR attention and leadership. The second adaptive challenge that I want to talk about today, which kind of seems unrelated, but I'm going to explain why it's actually essential, is to eliminate wasted human potential. The labor market, as you know, is bifurcating into a small number of high-skilled, highly paid jobs and a much larger number of unskilled, poorly paid, and insecure jobs, as we've seen with COVID and the gig economy. We can't just treat all this human potential as collateral damage. In the language of economics, as well as in soil cultivation, there's an exciting idea known as regenerative economy, regenerative agriculture, circular economy, zero waste business, where nothing is thrown away. And I think a zero waste business should also mean zero waste of human potential. And this potential can be realized in ways other than seeking to match skills and aptitudes to jobs. It can be realized outside the confines of work, outside the narrow definitions of productivity and work ethic. Again, Patagonia offers a lesson. Employees from all parts of the company are given 2 months away every year from their regular job to work for an environmental group of their choice, while continuing to earn their paycheck and benefits. Zero waste of human potential. Every person comes with a gift, a seed. And I think we're leaving a lot of potential on the table, a lot of seeds on the table, like mine in my sunroom here. We're tossing much of it aside. And I think the holy grail would be that I, as an employee of yours, would give of myself, my talents, my time, my skills, my passion, even if I were not getting paid. It's not as crazy as it sounds. Nearly every entrepreneur I know, maybe even some listening to this, have at one point or another given themselves to a cause or a vision bigger than themselves, beyond what they could guarantee they'd be compensated for. So I invite you to look for leadership moments that refocus attention on the giving of gifts, passion, and skills over productivity, on what calls to our care over what calls to our need for security and predictability. Living our lives rather than the life someone else pays us to live. Human resource leadership in this view becomes about cultivating an ecosystem where some may have the gift of making money and others have very valuable gifts that get expressed even though they're not easily capitalized. So I guess I don't know, I'm trying to think, how is this going to be useful to you as you formulate HR policy? And I guess if I was going to make that bridge, I'd say give a bit more attention to the health of the person as a whole. And I know this is part of it already, but even more, like, how do you transition back post-COVID to a holistic, regenerative human system from where we are today? Because when we understand that corporate wellness, social wellness, relational wellness, political wellness, spiritual and ecological wellness are all part of the same wellness, then the scope of our allowable action broadens. So ask yourself, what is calling to my care? What is mine to do right now? What's my leadership moment? And resist the urge to dilute your own potential by fitting everything into the language of HR policy, which increasingly prides itself so much on being scientific. But what do we really mean by scientific? We mean quantitative reasoning, doing things by the numbers. And to extend quantitative reasoning, to extend financial incentives to a new level, isn't going to bring us to the place of taking better care of our people. Let's come into more intimate relationship, having been locked away from each other for so long. Let's not let lockdown slip into getting locked back in to old ways of doing things. Let's reestablish intimate relationship to place, to life, to work. That's how deep the revolution is that's being offered to us right now. to look at each other and say, that feeling that I've had, it's true, that we do need each other, that my life is richer because you exist. And that's why gatherings like this one are so important. Like a seed, there is a time to go into the darkness together, the moist soil of uncertainty, of not knowing what's on the other side. But we can also plant different seeds, seeds that are actually more native to who we are, our ground of being. So as people try to pull us back from adaptive leadership into the old way of doing things, we can stay rooted to each other and to our shared humanity. Thank you.